It's time for Top Story on AM 1480 WLEA Hornell. Here's Ryan O'Neill.
Well, this week, the absentee ballots were counted in the unfinished November 5th elections. In Hornell's 4th Ward Alderman race, Republican Norm Makowski won. In Fremont, Robert Osborne was declared the official winner of the town supervisor's race. The school merger talks continue between Alfred Allen, Arkport, and Canasarega. School officials say there was nothing in the merger feasibility study to make any of the schools want to stop in their tracks and not want to do a merger study, which is the next step. But the top story this week was Common Core. Arkport School Board President Stephen Hoyt came out in favor of it. While Hoyt says he has some criticisms of Common Core, the Arkport School Board President says he likes it and does not want to go up against the state and risk being punished by the state. On the line with us to talk about what Arkport School Board President Stephen Hoyt said is the Avoca School Board President Sean Turner, who wanted to address Hoyt's statements on Common Core. Sean Turner, thanks for coming on today.
Absolutely.
Sean Turner, I first heard you talk briefly about Common Core when you were at the audience at the Elman Town Library meeting a few weeks ago. And you have some thoughts on Common Core, starting out with what Arkport School Board President Stephen Hoyt said the other night. We were there, and here's some of what Hoyt said.
The Common Core is designed to help us get to a point where our students are going to be able to adapt. Is it perfect? No, not close. But before you crucify it and say you got to jump away, but we've got to think about trying to make it work. And frankly, my job up here is to look for the benefit of this whole community and all our students. And part of that is I can't just say we're not going to do this because I have no idea whether they'll pull back all our state aid. And then I don't think any of you out there is ready to dig in your pocket and pay for what has to happen to keep us all going. It's a catch-22. What I think we need to do is work together, and I thought that's what we've been trying to do at this school, is to implement what we can, figure out what's not right, go back and fix it, or start looking at how we fix it, and keep plugging along. I don't think this is mass. Here's how you do it. And I think some people followed that script because they thought they had to. And I think we pulled back on that, and we're getting much better at that. So I'm sorry. I'm for the Common Core. I'm not sure that I like how it was presented to us. I don't like the fact that they were writing it as we were being asked to present it. I don't like a lot of things about it. But yeah, they still are. And I'm still writing curriculum. I just finished a worksheet that's going to go out tomorrow for my kids.
And that was Arkport School Board President Stephen Hoyt. On the line with us now, once again, is Sean Turner, the Avoca Central School Board President. Sean Turner, your thoughts on what was just said there by Stephen Hoyt?
Well, I think he's correct in a lot of his analysis, but I think I come from a slightly different perspective in the fact that I do have young children. I have a 10-year-old son, a 6-year-old son, as well as twin 3-year-old daughters that have been born into this system. So I don't look at it, wholly from a perspective as a school board president. I look at it from a father, from somebody looking at the education, looking at the modules coming home, talking to the teachers, looking at, some of the positives that come out of it, but also looking at all of the ramifications of the negative stuff that comes out of Common Core. And I think when you look at Common Core and you on paper, I do think it looks good. I was excited at first, but then the implementation of it, and if I can say the rollout of it, Mr. Hoyt was absolutely correct in saying, hey, it has not been implemented correctly. It's basically, it's a block, thrown on the school system saying, hey, 8th grade, this is what you have to teach, almost as if those 8th graders have been receiving Common Core all the way from kindergarten on up. And that's just not the case. So I think that's what he was talking about when talking about the implementation of Common Core. But if you look at Common Core as a whole, and you look at who's behind Common Core and the devastating effects that it potentially can have on the educational system, I think that's where I come from. Like I said, not as a school board president, but as a father of someone who looks at education as a very important thing. I think Common Core takes the teacher out of the classroom. It's a module-based educational system, step by step, by the numbers. Teacher says this, students say that. If students say the correct thing, the teacher comes back and says something else. I think it's different for the elementary as opposed to the high school. I think it's different for social studies as opposed to math. And so, while some teachers will have a positive experience, other teachers are going to have a negative experience, a more stressful experience. And that it doesn't just stop at the teachers. It translates to the students. It translates to the parents at home. And it also translates to the pocketbook of the taxpayers. And so I don't, Mr. Hoy had said, hey, I'm against it, and then he turns around and says he's a full supporter of it. Well, I'm lukewarm on it. I thought, well, maybe it could be a good thing. Maybe there are aspects of it, that are good. But I think the more I look at it, the more I realize this is not a good thing. I don't think it's bad for, America. Or I don't think it's good for America. I think it's bad for America. You look at a teacher, like a social studies teacher, who went to college, who has their own style, who maybe came from the military or some sort of other background, who goes into the, social studies classroom and can talk about their own personal history, can, give all these accolades or, or anecdotal statements on, what they're teaching. But now they can't do that. They have to go by this script. And so it actually takes the teacher that ability to connect with the students out of the classroom. And it puts it right in Washington, D.C. It puts it right at the federal government. It puts it right at the state government. And I think, those are just a few of the reasons that it's bad.
What about, I wanted to ask you, Sean Turner, the Avoca Central School Board president, first off, math. Have there been any complaints about the way that math is being taught now at Avoca Central because of Common Core?
Absolutely. I think when looking at math specifically, there are teachers that have been doing math for 20 years, and looking at the Common Core, there's terminology inside the new math curriculum that these teachers have never even heard from. You're talking about math teachers that have been in, like I said, 20 years in learning new terminology, and they're trying to figure out, well, what does that mean? What does this mean? It's people that have been in the profession for absolute years, and now we're finding terminology borrowed from, old schools of thought or from another country.
On the literature, the books that I've heard object to the most, there's 3 books. 2 books about Middle Eastern wars, which they say is too violent and graphic, and a book called The Bluest Eye, which critics say is somewhat pornographic. Can you tell us about the Common Core literature being used at Avoca Central, and is it receiving the kind of objections from parents that we see in other schools, for example, with The Bluest Eye?
Yes. I was actually going to talk about the other book for a second. From being a combat veteran, in the Middle East, looking at that literature that may not be age appropriate. And so, looking at that, at the combat side of it, at the war side of it, and how it spins the American soldier, as not a good person. I don't think that's healthy for America to look at soldiers as in a negative sense. And then, to a lesser extent, looking at, the other book there, in general, I know that the English teachers don't like it. The English teachers, they can't pick a book that they've read for years or, have their own discretion in choosing, what they want to teach. They have to teach what somebody at the highest level says, these are the 3 books you're going to teach. And not only these are the 3 books you're going to teach, this is also how you're going to teach it. So a guy like me, I could go in there and just read the module, wait for the correct response, read the next part.
Our final question for Avoca Central School Board President Sean Turner. Is it true that you cannot fight Common Core?
That's absolutely not true. Everyone has a choice. Whether we're willing to accept the consequences or not of one action over another, there's always a choice. Was it true we'd have to, pay back money to, race to the top? Absolutely. But there are always choices. So to sit there, like Steve Hoyt said, and say, hey, this is here to stay, let's just deal with it. I don't think that's the American spirit. I don't think it's the American way. I think you fight against things and you stand up for what's right. So no, there are definitely things that we can do.
Avoca Central School Board President Sean Turner, I want to thank you very much for coming on today.
All right. Thanks a lot, and God bless.
If Arkport Central School Board President Steve Hoyt wants to respond to anything that was said here today, he's welcome on our next show. In the next segment, Assemblyman Joe Giglio to talk Common Core, gun laws, and other issues. In segment 3, Assemblyman Phil Palmisano and State Senator Tom O'Mara to talk fracking, Common Core, and Obamacare.
Alfred University football at 1 today on AM 1480 WLEA.
Back on the show in segment 2 with Assemblyman Joe Giglio, who represents all of Allegheny County, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Assemblyman Giglio, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Assemblyman Giglio, in the last segment, Avoca School Board President Sean Turner denounced Common Core, and from covering the Alfred Alman Central School meetings, as a reporter that Alfred Alman School Superintendent Rich Calkins is no fan of Common Core. Calkins said publicly the state put the cart before the horse on that one. Assemblyman Giglio, you and Senator Kathy Young recently met with officials from Alfred Alman Central, and those school officials came away with very positive comments about that meeting with you and Senator Young. Can you tell us, Assemblyman Giglio, your thoughts on that get-together with the Alfred School Superintendent Rich Calkins and School Board Member Brooke Harris?
Well, it was obviously a good meeting, and we all came away with good feelings. We need to hear from our superintendents and our school boards to identify the problems related to Common Core and some of the solutions that we can hopefully implement to make this all better. Right now, as it's going, it creates a lot of problems. And when you have a school district, as the superintendent said, that operates as efficiently as Alfred Alman, and then all of a sudden things are not going as good as you would hope, then there's a clear indicator that there's a problem wrong with the process and the bill itself. So it was a very interesting and informative meeting for both me and Senator Young, and I hope we were helpful to them.
Assemblyman Giglio, you're a supporter of Assemblyman Graff's bill to pull the state out of Common Core. What made you want to sign up with that?
Well, a number of different things. I'll start out with one size doesn't fit all. You know, my district is rural in nature, and a lot of those standards make it almost difficult, if not impossible, for the districts operating with so little money to implement those kind of programs. So that's the first thing. Second thing, I think the rush to judgment and teaching to the test is another thing that I find not a very good idea. They've taken creativity away from the districts and those on the front lines, the teachers, and now we're teaching to test, and I don't think that's what we intended to send our children to school for. You know, I believe there should be measurement and testing, obviously, but, you know, all of a sudden the concentration is completely on these state tests, and nothing else matters. I have a problem with that. The cost, again, associated with this stuff, without giving the school districts any additional money to implement it, and including the teachers' evaluations and stuff like that. I've talked to superintendents who said they'd have to hire a whole person to do the evaluations right now. So what it was is the way it was been described to us, and as you can see, it was a whole bunch of different things put together in one bill, asked to be done at one time. As some of the superintendents have characterized, including Mr. Calkins, he goes, at one of these things we could have done, and got it done well. But when you throw a whole multitude of things at us at the same time, it makes it almost impossible. And, they were claiming they were worried about morale of the teachers who don't know what's expected of them right now and who will be measured by the results of some of those tests. And at some point, although it's important we measure and it's important we evaluate everybody that works in the district and works anywhere, I think we need to have the standards set first, teach them the standards. Again, get those standards out, and then then allow the school districts to adapt and allow teachers to adapt, and then move on to the next stage. So that's part of what we're seeing as an overall problem, too much all at once and not a real clear definition from state ed on what to do, or even better, a roadmap on how to get there.
Assemblyman Giglio, you have some upcoming meetings on Common Core. I think one's in Jamestown. Can you tell us about some of those meetings?
Well, we're out as a conference. We have hit the road to try to get input from everybody involved and see, just like we did the other day with that meeting you discussed, and try to get a real good handle on what's strong about these things and what's weak and where we need to clear up any inefficiencies in the system and find out exactly what's working and what's not working so that we can hopefully modify this down the line so when we get back to make it workable. Everybody wants the school districts to work well. We want our children educated. You know, Brian, I don't want to sacrifice, any children, 4 years of a children's high school career, for instance, because these are not clear, definitive goals. That these are not clear and definitive in how you're going to get there. That these curriculums are not as clear as they should be. So as they're messing with the system, our kids are going to school, and they don't get this 4 years back. When you're talking about those in high school and those in elementary school too. I mean, at what point, how many times are you going to change the way we teach? And these kids then have to adapt to that. At some point we have to understand what we're trying to get to and how we're going to get there. Like I said, back to a roadmap. And what works in all the school districts, like I said, one size doesn't fit all. What we may need in our part of the state is completely different than what they need in the big 5 school districts that are, basically urban and stuff like that. So there's a lot going on.
We're talking with Assemblyman Joe Giglio. Moving on to the Cuomo gun laws, the Safe New York Act. It turns out the background check computers won't be ready for the original January 2014 deadline. They were going to be checking out people on ammunition buys. Your take on that, Assemblyman?
Well, it just goes to show again the instance that we've talked about, the SAFE Act, way too much. A bad bill that was rushed through, with the message of necessity. No time to vet the bill. No time to do any real research on it. No time for any opposition to come out to it. And you're seeing the results that it's a bill that can't work. It comes down to the same thing they did, with the clips from 10 to 7 when nobody makes seven bullet clips, and you can go on from there. These things that they're doing to try to be Big Brother when it comes to firearms and ammunition just isn't going to work. They're not well thought out. They're not needed. They're going after law-abiding citizens, and as you can see, every time they do something like this, it doesn't work. And now this computer is just the latest black eye that they're going to have.
Assemblyman Giglio, the legislative session coming up, your priorities for the next legislative session?
Well, the main thing that, as we get back is, obviously the budget and making sure there's no increases there and any deficits closed. But the most important thing that seems to, there's two things. But the first thing I want is mandate relief. And we've been promised that by, the governor's office and some leadership for a while, and with that, and it was supposed to come with the tax cap, and we haven't had enough yet. So we have to help the counties and local governments and the school districts, deal with the cap and make it fair and get rid of, the bad mandates and rules and regulations that are promulgated by the executive branch that raise the cost of doing business in the state of New York. So, those two things are really important. We need to enhance the business climate in New York because we need a new revenue stream and we need more jobs and opportunity. And you can do that by reducing property taxes, and those property taxes are reduced by mandates. Everything sort of ties into each other. And then the other thing is something we've been, and I've been fighting for since I've got there, is the rules of our House, especially, where the Assembly is antiquated. We have a speaker that has total control, and that's ridiculous. We should have the ability to get bills to the floor without him saying yes or no, as long as they're constitutional. It's the chairman system. It has been there that, again, just based on whomever the speaker chooses. So he has way, way too much control. And then, I am on the ethics committee, and we've had enough corruption there to choke a horse. So, and he's been presiding over it. And he's had some recent problems of his own, not directly related to him, but directly related to his chief of staff, where her husband was recently let go from a charity for apparently stealing, a bunch of money. I don't know where that is now, but some of that money allegedly went into, Democratic Assembly campaign coffers controlled by the speaker. So, the rules part to open up the system to the rank and file, to take it away from the 3 men in a room and now 4, are something I've been attacking since I got there. I said, that I was appalled to see how bad they have corrupted the system that our forefathers had gave us. This system of government was meant to be a representative system, and those of us that are delegates from all parts of the state, 150 of us in the Assembly, should have the ability to move legislation forward without the speaker saying yes or no. No one person should ever have that much power.
Assemblyman Joe Gilly, I want to thank you very much for coming on.
You're welcome, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Assemblyman Phil Palmisano and Senator O'Mara are next.
Alfred University football at 1 today on AM 1480 WLEA.
State Senator Tom O'Mara and Assemblyman Phil Palmisano here in segment 3. Assemblyman, thanks for joining us.
Good to be with you.
Senator, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me on, Brian. Good morning.
Senator and Assemblyman, the big topic everybody's talking about these days is Common Core. We did catch up with you, Assemblyman Palmisano, a couple weeks ago on this, so I wanted to start out with Senator O'Mara. Senator, the Canisteo Greenwood Elementary School principal said Common Core is going well at the elementary school there. The Arkport School Board president has criticisms of Common Core, but basically he supports it. The Avoca Central School Board president and the Alfred Almond School Superintendent are denouncing Common Core. Hornell School Superintendent is not as outspoken as Alfred Almond or Avoca's school superintendent, but the Hornell School Superintendent does have his criticisms of it as well. So it's not as if Common Core is off to a great start and getting unanimous approval from all school officials across the board. Senator O'Mara wondered, what are you hearing and what are your thoughts on Common Core?
Well, I think what you've just described is what we're hearing all over the state. We have got parents that are angry about the over-standardized testing that is contemplated with this. We've got parents that are angry about the subject matter and the content of the curriculum in some of the reading examples and whatnot. The new way of doing math is confusing, and I have children in junior high school, and they're going through some of this, and I understand the frustrations, and change is always difficult when we change it. And one of the things we've done in education in recent years, it seems we're always changing. While we want to improve our standards and we want to improve what kids are learning, so they're coming out better prepared for a career or college. We need to come up with something that we're going to follow for a period of time, so it has time to work itself in. This Common Core, the biggest criticism I heard across the board from everybody is the way it's been rushed in. The implementation time has been inappropriate, too short, and the materials haven't been ready for teachers to utilize. And there are major problems with the implementation of this. And there's also concerns about the privacy of the data from what the results of these standardized tests are going to be used for and how that could be tied to your child in the future. We really have privacy concerns over it. So, there's a wide range of concerns and concerns from a whole variety of different interest groups that normally aren't aligned in some of these areas. So it's very much in a state of flux right now.
Assemblyman Palmisano, you and Chemung County Assemblyman Chris Friend have a meeting on Common Core. That's December 5th at Corning Painted Post. Wondering, what kind of things are you hearing, Assemblyman, this week on Common Core?
Well, I think just basically what you heard from Senator O'Mara and what you've been saying. And, each week we're hearing from parents and teachers. I've met with some parents again this week on the issue. I've talked to superintendents on the issue this week. It's a problem. Again, I think first and foremost, the implementation, how this thing has come into play, has been quite frankly ridiculous. Brian, think about it. The analogy I guess I want to give to the listeners: if you're seeing so many problems with an issue, if you're in your car and you're driving on the highway and there are people along the sidelines showing red flags, you're going to slow down. You don't put the gas to the pedal and just blow through the intersection. And that's what we're seeing with the education department. It's like they're not looking around; they're just blowing through the intersection. They're not asking for input or feedback, and that's how they've rushed this thing, and that's why there's so many problems. And as Senator O'Mara said, from the testing to the privacy to the curriculum, the content and age appropriateness, the local control side of it, the cost. All these things are big problems, and they need to be addressed. You can't disregard the concerns that have been elevated by the parents and teachers and community members about this new program, which is very costly on top of it.
Moving on to fracking now, there was a public hearing Thursday night in the town of Alfred where officials heard from a small audience on their thoughts and feelings on extending the one-year moratorium in Alfred. The actual vote on that will be December 12th at the Alfred Town Hall, and that'll be the town board. Wondering, and this question is for either the senator or assemblyman, whoever wants to answer this one, anything new? What's the latest from state government in Albany on fracking?
The only thing new on fracking is that the governor came out again this week and said that he's going to have a decision on fracking prior to Election Day of 2014. That'll be roughly 6.5 years from the time the moratorium has been in place from former Governor Patterson, and tying a decision in this process to coming out before an election day, I think just is blatant that the decision is being based in politics and not on the science or the facts around fracking and moving forward, when this is certainly an industry that can provide a great deal of economic activity across the southern tier. Certainly we all want to do it safely and responsibly for the environment, but it just smacks of politicalization of it when you're saying they're going to come out with a decision by Election Day. I don't understand that at all. And in response to that, you know, the New York statewide GOP Republican Chairman Ed Cox came out and blasted the governor for sitting on this and not making a decision on the merits of the industry itself.
And then there was word from Albany reporters that someone in Albany was considering sicking investigators on Ed Cox for making that statement? There were some allegations because Ed Cox owns some interest in some gas or oil company that, according to what I've read, isn't involved in the fracking industry. Now, another new development that I didn't mention before is that the Landowners Coalition across the southern tier has filed a lawsuit against the governor on a takings claim for the governor's failure to act on this as taking their property, without due process by sitting on this and not allowing the landowners to utilize their land and extract their minerals, gas, and resources from land that they own. Assemblyman Palmisano, on Obamacare, I was kind of surprised to hear some good news on it this week. It actually came from Steuben County Administrator Mark Alger. Alger told one of our reporters at the Steuben County Legislative meeting this week that Obamacare was actually kind of helping out in the Steuben County budget. Here's what Alger told one of our reporters on Thursday when they passed the budget.
Yes, we're seeing a fairly significant reduction, and that's really a direct result of the federal share of Medicaid going up for those people who are within that 125% of poverty level region. New York has always covered them, so it's not a new cost to New York, but the reimbursement used to be 50-50, and now it's going to 90-10, so it reduces the state and the county's share for those people.
Your reaction to Alger's thoughts there, Assemblyman Palmisano?
Well, I think, for the first year there are going to be some, savings with the growth because the federal government's picking up a larger share than it normally picks up on the Medicaid dollars. The concerns I have, and I know a number of my colleagues have, is the long-term ramifications of that, because in year one, the growth of the Medicaid, because the state opted in to expand the Medicaid program, the federal government picks up 100%. But in years 2 or 3, it's down to 90%. And thereafter, there's no determination of what that reimbursement is going to be. And we all know there's a fiscal crisis going on in Washington. And if the federal government decides we're not going to pay 90% anymore, we're just going to go down to 50%, the state's going to have to make up that cost. And that's going to be right on the taxpayers. So I have concerns with the long-term ramifications of the expansion of Obamacare and the expansion of Medicaid. We went through a big battle last year over the funding for the developmentally disabled. And fortunately, because of public pressure and the efforts we all put in place, we were able to restore that funding. But at the same time that funding was being cut in the budget process, they were expanding the Medicaid program to accommodate this. And I think that's my concerns are long-term because this is going to be a big increase long-term to the state government and the state taxpayers.
Senator O'Mara, how is it affecting Obamacare? How is it affecting state government and state taxes?
Again, as the Assemblyman was saying, that in the initial years, the federal government is going to pick up a larger percentage of Medicaid. We've seen that New York has had one of the more successful healthcare exchanges set up with the website they have, and signed up about 50,000 people so far in the first month of sign-ups, but we're seeing the majority of those are qualifying for Medicaid, so they're not actually signing up for private health insurance that they're going to pay for, which in the end is overall what's going to help support, allegedly, this Affordable Care Act. But we're just adding more people onto Medicaid in New York, and as long as the federal government keeps up their support at a higher rate in coming years, then that should help New York and its Medicaid burdens. But there's certainly no guarantee that the federal government is, first of all, going to be able to do that with the fiscal crises they have going on, or whether they're going to want to continue to do that.
Well, our thanks to all our guests today, Assemblyman Palmisano and Joe Giglio, Senator Tom O'Mara, and Avoca School Board President Sean Turner. Of course, in this segment, thanks to Senator O'Mara and Assemblyman Palmisano for coming on.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian. Have a great day.
I'm Brian O'Neill. Thanks for listening. Do It Best's Ask the Experts is next. Next.